Hello friends, I am Nisha Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of English. And the topic under discussion today is in continuation with our critical discussion on Thomas Gray. And the topic is themes in Alice Written in a Country Churchyard. In Alice Written in a Country Churchyard, Thomas Gray develops themes that emphasize the commonalities among human beings. The most obvious commonality is that all people die. When born, they all have innate talents and potential. Whether they realize their potential depends on the opportunities during life. Regardless of social class, however, every person finds joy in love. The poem Elegy speaks of ordinary people. It is an elegy for poor villagers. They are not famous, but they are honest. So the poet has written this poem in honoring them. The poet the poem talks about death as an equalizer. Rich or poor should end in death. Moreover, no man can escape death. In death, all are equal. Besides, nothing, including any amount of richer glory, can bring the dead to life. Even poor people deserve respect for their death. Given opportunities, they would have become great men in their times. Now we'll discuss each theme one by one. First is death. Gray introduces this theme in the title of his poem. An elegy, after all, is a poem written to commemorate the dead. However, an elegy traditionally memorializes a great leader, a hero, a monarch, or some other notable who has died. Gray's focus, in contrast, is on the rude forefathers of a small country village buried in the local churchyard. He makes clear that death does not discriminate between the great and the humble. Everyone dies regardless of their status or accomplishments. Gray's Elegy is one of the best known poems about death in all of European literature. The poem presents the reflections of an observer who, passing by a churchyard that is out in the country, stops for a moment to think about the significance of the strangers buried there. Scholars of medieval time sometimes kept human skulls on their desktop to keep themselves conscious of the fact that someday they, like the skull's former occupants, would die. From this practice, we get the phrase memento mori, which we say to this day to describe any token one uses to keep one's mortality in mind. In this poem, the graveyard acts as a memento mori, reminding the narrator to not place too much value to not place too much value on this life because someday he too will be dead and buried. The speaker of the poem is surrounded by the idea of death, and throughout the first seven stanzas, there are numerous images pointing out the contrast between death and life. After mentioning the churchyard in the title, which establishes the theme of mortality, the poem itself begins with images of gloom and finality. The darkness at the end of the day, the forlorn mourn of lowing cattle, the stillness of the air highlighted the beetles' stilted motion and the owl's nocturnal hooting all serve to set a background for this serious meditation. However, it is not until the fourth stanza that the poem actually begins to deal with the cemetery, mentioned as the place where the village forefathers live. In the following stanzas, the speaker tries to imagine what the lives of these simple people might have been like, touching upon their relations with their wives, children, and the soil that they work. They are not defined by their possessions because they have few, and instead are defined by their actions, which serves to contrast the lives with their quiet existence in the graveyard. This elegy presents the dead in the best light. Their families adored them and they were cheerful in their work as they hung the woods beneath their steady straw. The speaker openly admits that they are spoken of so well precisely because they are dead, because death is such a terrible thing that its victims deserve the respect of the living. In the 90s, the poet explained in line 90, the poet explained, some pious drops the closing I requires, explaining that the living should show their respect for death with their sorrow. This theme is developed most clearly in stanzas 9 through 11. Gray points out that nobility, power, beauty, and wealth are no protection against death. It is still inevitable. As he says, the paths of glory lead but to the grave. What's more, the praise heaped on the glorious dead, such as memorials and commemorative songs or statuary, makes no difference. The dead remain dead. Neither honor nor flattery will bring them back to life. Death, Gray shows, is the ultimate leveler, making everyone equal in the end. Next theme can be search for self. The speaker of this poem goes through a process of recognizing what is important to him and choosing how to live his life, which leads to the epitaph with which he would like to be remembered. In stanza 8, the poem begins naming the attributes that are normally considered desirable but are now considered pointless when compared with the lives of the rustic dead in the country graveyard. Ambition and grandeur, according to the speaker, should not think less of these people because of their simple accomplishments. He goes on to assert that pride and memory have no right to ignore them, and that honor and flattery will be as useless to the rich as to the poor when they are dead. The speaker, an uneducated person, gives much consideration to the subject of knowledge and whether the lack of it made the lives of these country people less significant. Their poverty blocked the way to knowledge, he decides, and the lack of knowledge separated them from vices as well as virtues, so that in the end he does not consider his education a factor in making him better or worse than them either. In the end, having eliminated all of the supposed benefits of the wealthy, educated world that he comes from, the speaker identifies himself with the graveyard inhabitants to such a degree that he winds up in this humble graveyard after his death. In contrast to the simple graves with a warm-hearted in contrast to the simple graves that he pondered over throughout his life, though the speaker's grave is marked with a warm hearted memorial, the epitaph at the end of the poem. Assuming that such a thoughtful person would not have been so immodest as to write this epitaph for himself, there must have been some other literate person to remember him. He is also remembered by an illiterate member of the farm community, the hoary headed swain, who has to ask someone to read the epitaph. Before the death of the poem's narrator, this swain established a non verbal relationship with him, observing him from afar, wondering about him just as the narrator wondered about the country people buried there. Next theme is class conflict. A superficial reading of this poem might leave the impression that the author intends to present members of the lower class as being more worthy of praise than their upper class counterparts. This would be a reasonable assumption, since so much of the poem is devoted to praising the simple virtues of the poor. In the larger scope, though the position that Gray takes is that all people, poor or rich, are equal, this is a meditation on death, which has been called the great equalizer because no one can avoid it. The reason that the poem seems to favor one class over the other is that it is working against the assumption that only those of the upper class are worthy of attention when they die. It is the humble condition of the country churchyard with gravestones unmarked or possibly marked just with names by illiterate people unable to read that draws attention to the virtues of the poor and uneducated, which society often forgets, and so much of the poem is spent praising their moral strength. The virtues of the wealthy and famous are not denied. They just are not explored in this poem because they are already so familiar. Evidence of the poem's even handedness about the different classes can be seen in the fact that while praising the poor country people throughout, Gray also acknowledges that education, which may give them opportunity to develop moral excellence, may also lead them to corruption. As he says in stanza 17, the humble circumstances of the poor limited the growth not only of their virtues but also of their crimes. The point thus leaves open the question of superiority. Society glorifies the rich, and the poem's narrator glorifies the poor. But as he reminds us, the paths of glory lead but to the grave. Next theme is social class and opportunity. Gray points out that being born as peasants in a farming community prevented the humble dead from having the opportunity to develop their innate abilities. He develops this idea in stanza 12 through 14. Among the dead might be ones whose hearts burned with celestial fire, or whose hands the road of empire might have swayed, or wake to ecstasy the living life. But they did not become saints, leaders of the nation, or great artists because they do not have access to knowledge. Instead, they are held back by poverty. To support this notion, Gray alludes to three particular historical figures from the time of the English Civil Wars: John Hampden, John Milton, and Oliver Cromwell. All three opposed tyranny and championed freedom of religion. Gray suggests some among the dead might have done the same had they had the chance. However, the English civil wars were also a time of great bloodshed for the nation. Gray suggests that Cromwell buried here, not Oliver Cromwell, is guiltless of his country's blood. Those who do great deeds, he points out, can also do great wrong. Thus, the accident of birth that kept these peasants from becoming great men also prevented them from committing great crimes. They were born and died far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife. As a result, they never learned to stay. And the last theme is importance of love. Despite their humble life, the dead enjoyed simple pleasures while alive. One of these is the love of their families. Gray describes the lives the dead once led in stanza 6. One clear image is of children greeting their father when he came back home from the fields. They would climb his knees, the envied kiss to share vying for his affection. This lively picture of the family life is full of joy. Similarly, the epitaph, which speaks for the dead youth buried there, says heaven sends recompense for the youth's generosity and sincerity. This recompense is friendship. Thus, Gray identifies family and friends, both simple pleasures, as the greatest joys in life. After a person's earthly life, these loved ones will remember them and grieve them. Gray considered this in stanza 22 and 23, saying the dying person looks back on life with longing. The parting soul relies on the love in some fond breast and requires a few tears. It is only natural, Gray says, to want to be remembered by loved ones. Thank you.